Everybody, welcome into Mining Stock Daily. We have a corporate update from a company based out of Arizona and Mexico. But before we get into that conversation with the CEO of Barksdale, let's run through these numbers. The general market in the U.S. is just deep in the red. Every major indice is down over 2%. S&P down 2.25%. NASDAQ down just 2.1%. The Dow Jones was down over 3% at one point, now down 2.75%. So a lot of selling off happening in the markets today due to pessimism and stimulus talks, if you can imagine that, and also kind of fears with coronavirus and potential economic shutdown once again. We will see how that pans out. Gold strongly is relatively flat today, holding in there at 1905 futures basis. Silver, on the other hand, is seeing a bit of a sell-off, down 25 cents to $24.42. And copper as well is also seeing a little bit of a sell-off. We're going to stick to the copper theme here with Rick Trotman from Barksdale Resources after a quick marketing change, name change there, previously Barksdale Capital. Rick, it's a pleasure to have you on once again.
Hey, Trevor. Good to see you again, and thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's thanks for your patience here getting us through those numbers. It has been a rather volatile day all around, with the exception of gold, so that's very promising. But we're going to focus on Barksdale here. You just returned from the ground, now kind of in practice for your 2-week quarantine now that you're back home in Vancouver, seeing all the sites that you have there in the portfolio. Let's start off. You've just closed down just over $6 million in financing. This is a good position for you. You've been able to acquire a project out of Mexico, which you were recently at. Give us the rundown of this project and why the acquisition.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so look, Trevor, we've got a portfolio of projects, both in Arizona and now in Mexico. And really the underlying theme of everything that we do in the company is, trying to find undervalued assets that we think that we can unlock for the benefit of our shareholders over time. And San Javier really falls into that category. This is a project that's been sitting in private hands, really doing nothing for probably 12 years. The last company that owned it went bankrupt in the GFC, and the group that bought it ended up spending quite a number of years just going through and trying to get the old contracts and land ownership agreements into a good spot. So they ended up missing a couple of copper cycles, and quite honestly, this thing just sat on the shelf way too long. And we found this opportunity. We're able to negotiate a deal with the owners of the project, who are really, I'd say, high quality mining sponsors, with very good backgrounds, and generally they're folks that I would want to have Barksdale shares for a long, long time. They're good, solid owners. And so we've got a great option deal that allows us to get into San Javier, see what we can do with the asset in terms of making it bigger, hopefully making it higher grade and pushing it forward towards development. And the deal we structured on it kind of gives us a number of years to kind of get through some of those de-risking activities. And we kind of pay along the way as far as these option payments are concerned. So it's a well-structured deal. I think it's good value. And San Javier, I think, has got a lot of upside that we can, take advantage of and deliver to our shareholders.
Yeah, Mexico is predominantly known for, obviously, its higher grade silver production. We also see a lot of, oxide gold development as well in the country. I think copper maybe takes some people by surprise, or is that kind of a misconception?
Yeah, I don't know a lot of small scale, publicly listed copper producers that have assets in Mexico. So no, I think your question is well in line. Copper production in Mexico is probably dominated by a couple of big groups, right? Southern Copper and groups like that have very large operations in Sonora, kind of like Cananea or La Caridad. But other than that, most of the copper production, I would say, is probably small-scale private things. I would say some of the smaller things that are in public hands are probably like Capstone, who has the Cozamin deposit.
Nope.
in Mexico. It's kind of a polymetallic. So there's certainly a lot of copper in Mexico. But yeah, I would say, silver is generally the buzzword down there, and especially in this market, gold. But look, we try to find things when the cycle is not very hot, so that way we don't pay crazy prices. And right now, that's copper. It's kind of turned a bit, but I don't think we've seen the cycle play out on copper. I think it's got a couple of years left. So I think over the next year or two, you'll see a lot more transactions in copper in Mexico. Hopefully, we've got a couple more under our belt too.
Very good. So this project does have a historic resource, and you mentioned you think you can go in there and maybe expand that resource. Can you run us down some of those numbers, and are those NI 43-101 compliant?
Yeah, they are 43101 compliant. Like I said, the last group that was in there, they operated this exploration project from probably 2004 to 2009 when they went bankrupt, and they did a lot of drilling in that time. And they put together a 43101 resource on the deposit that was something on the order of 50 million tons of, let's call it 0.35 copper. This is not a resource that I would like to hang my hat on. I don't think that it was very well constructed. And, while it might sound bad to most of your viewers, to me, it's an opportunity. It was a group that went way too fast. They were hell bent on getting this thing into production, and all they wanted to do was drill, drill, drill. But they didn't spend the time to actually put the thing together right. So, for instance, this resource, it didn't have a geologic model that underpinned it. It didn't have a structural model. It didn't have any alteration included in it. So really, I would call it more of a geologic inventory at this point until we can actually apply geology to it, especially given that there's a bunch of faults through this deposit that kind of chop things up. So, it kind of gives us a starting point, 50 million tons. And I hope that that's something that not only we can make higher grade, but that we can expand over time. And this is kind of a district play. So there's lots of other showings in the district, some of which are on our ground. Others are on ground that we look to secure here in the near future. And so this is a district that I think can grow, quite large over time.
So where do you pick up the pieces with San Javier? Is it you go back to, some real early stage, rock chip sampling, type of work, knowing that you still have this historic data from 20 years ago, or is there a way to? I mean, I don't want to say cut corners because that sounds bad, but do you not need to go that early with some of this historical workings?
It really depends on where you're at, Trevor. So within the Cerro Verde deposit, which is kind of the largest and most advanced project within the concession areas, there's a lot of drilling, and quite honestly, we're going to use that to our advantage. So, we've probably got 30,000 meters of drilling within that area. I've got a geologist heading down to site tonight to start a relogging program to basically start putting all of that historical data into a more relevant context. So we're going to start working up a new geologic model. We're going to re-assay a bunch of the old core that wasn't assayed for precious metals, for instance. Look, we're going to start at the ground up, but we're going to rely on that historic data. It's only 15 years old, if that, and we've got all the core and pulps and rejects and things like that. So we're in fantastic shape. This is millions of dollars of work product that we are going to be able to take advantage of. And so I'm hoping that, sometime probably in the first half of next year, we have a resource out that has all of the historic data plus some of the new drilling that we're going to embark upon. And then we'll be able to show the world exactly what this looks like and where we're going to go with it.
All right, so let's turn our attention. So 6 hours north is really your flagship. I guess you can call it your flagship, the Sunnyside project. And then you also have the Four Metals project and the San Antonio project, all kind of around the massive Hermosa project now being advanced by South 32. For people who are maybe new to this sector, and we've seen a lot of new capital, younger people coming in, South 32 bought that Hermosa project from Arizona Mining for, what was it, $1.4 billion, Rick? something like that.
Yeah, excluding the stock that they owned. I think the
Yeah.
overall deal was 2.1 billion Canadian.
Yeah, so you have three projects within that district alone that either is within the Hermosa project or just adjacent, butting into the on the west side and also the southeast side. I'm just curious, are you? Is this similar geology that you were seeing from these other three projects that you were seeing down in San Javier, or is there any comparison to be making there with the mineralogy?
No, with the mineralogy,
Okay.
it's completely different. I think the one aspect that they all have in common is that they're in districts that have lots of potential, and the district in Arizona that we're in, the Patagonia district, I think is just further advanced. So we're seeing the fruit of all of that exploration labor that's been going on for 50 years. So we're next to a monster up there. That
Right.
Hermosa deposit, as you mentioned, owned by South 32, it's kind of a generational asset. And hopefully down at San Javier, we can kind of, do great work and show that we have a generational asset down there. But, Sunnyside is our flagship, and the projects that we have in that district, we think, really have the potential to transform this company. And we've been diligently pushing several permitting processes ahead over the past couple of years. And those should be kind of coming to an end in 2021, knock on wood. And that'll give us the ability to really turn this car on and rev up the engine and see where we can't go.
What kind of permitting are you talking? Just drill permitting, exploration drill permitting?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the all the land tenure that we have in that Arizona district is on unpatented mining claims administered by the U.S. Forest Service, and so we've got to go through a bit of a lengthy permitting process to get the permission to drill up there, and it's a pain in the butt, and takes a long time, and you incur quite a bit of brain damage going through those processes, but at the end of the day, we know that what we're looking for is well worth that attention to detail and well worth all of that trouble. So it's very exciting to kind of be on the downward slope of that process, kind of coming into the finish line.
So, what do you need to do up into that point? Will there be news out of Sunnyside for metals in San Antonio as this permitting process advances?
Yes, exactly. So at Sunnyside, I keep the permitting news on Sunnyside pretty low key. I feel like investors really don't like to get monthly updates on permitting. It just kind of makes them fall asleep. What we will do is put out some kind of key milestones. So when we finish off the public comment period for Sunnyside, we'll put out a press release. When we get what's called the finding of no significant impact, which is kind of the Forest Service kind of stamp of approval. It's not the final yes, but it's kind of that preliminary indication. We'll put that out, and then obviously once we have the ability to post our bond and get to work, we'll put that out as well. And same goes for our San Antonio project, which is in permitting. We expect that process to kind of wrap up in January, and so we'll put out a press release, once we get down to the finish line on that process.
Will you need to go back to the market and finance after you get the permits? Will you need to finance this drilling program?
No. So the San Antonio project that can be executed with the cash that we have on our balance sheet. Same thing with San Javier. Once we get to Sunnyside, I'm assuming that we would have already had, one or two drilling programs on the other projects by then, and we might have to finance. But really, we'll kind of see where we're at that point. But the first two drilling programs that we have within the company, San Javier and San Antonio, we're fully cashed up to execute those programs.
Just curious, what do you were just on the ground there in Arizona before you went down to Mexico. You told me before we started recording. Just curious, what's the latest you're hearing from South 32 and their work on the Hermosa and the Taylor deposit?
Yeah, look, they're spending a lot of time and a lot of money pushing that project forward. They're working on a pre-feasibility study down there, and they're also working on a permitting application to push their underground workings deeper so that they can take bulk samples and drill underground and kind of de-risk the project ahead of presumably a construction decision. And so, all of these activities, are keeping them very busy in the area. COVID's kind of set everyone back and slowed everything down, from what I understand. But they're still pushing ahead, working from home, and getting a lot of good work done.
Yeah, very good. Before we let you go, Rick, anything else you want to leave our listeners with before you depart?
No, I think we've covered the basis there, Trevor. Other than, look us up. We've listed on the Canadian exchange with BRO and on the U.S. exchange with BRKCF.
All right, Rick. Well, appreciate you coming on the show. And I know you're in quarantine. It's never fun, but, try to make the best out of it, okay?
Lots of time to do work.
All right. That's Rick Trotman. He's the CEO of Barksdale Resources. Thanks again, everybody. We will be back